Already in the West, the leaders of the Christian faith have begun to question the very core of the Christian religious beliefs. In fact, not too long ago, in a magazine called The Evangelist, there was the results of a questionnaire that was distributed to some 10,000 different Christian ministers of all different denominations. About 7,400 of them actually responded. And the results of it were quite shocking, but are typical of what we find in the United States in terms of the state of religious beliefs and practices of the Americans. And remember, these are the ministers. These are the leaders of the church, not the average follower. The average follower would be in much worse condition than even this. And the first question on the questionnaire was, did Jesus actually rise from the dead? Now, you would think that every Christian would say yes to the fact that Jesus arose from the dead. But 51% of the Methodist ministers said no, Jesus did not rise from the dead. Which is, again, is very important, because St. Paul says within the Bible in many places, but in 1 Corinthians chapter 15 verse 14, and again in chapter 15 verse 17, that if we do not believe in the death and resurrection of Jesus, that our preaching is void. In fact, he said, if Christ was not raised, your faith is worthless. And 51% of the Methodist ministers said Jesus did not rise from the dead. So their faith is worthless, in the words of St. Paul. The second question in the questionnaire was also a very important one that Muslims 100% should say yes to. Was Jesus born of the Virgin Mary? And 60% of the Methodist ministers said no. Jesus was not born of the Virgin Mary. The third question was, are Satan and demon spirits real? And again, 62% of the Methodist ministers said no. There is nothing such as a Satan or the devil. I don't know what they think the story in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 4, verses 1 through 11, when Satan is supposedly tempting Jesus is all about. I guess they must have thought he was hallucinating or something. Because it's right there that Satan was tempting Jesus, but 62% of them said that they did not believe in that. And I think the most important question, and as a consequence of even the third question, is the Bible the Word of God? And eventually this is why the Quran became the book of my life, when I began to consider this. 57% of the American Lutherans said that the Bible is not the Word of God. 82% of the Presbyterians said no, the Bible is not the Word of God. 82% of the Methodists said no, the Bible is not the Word of God. And 89% of the Anglicans or the Episcopalians said no, the Bible is not the Word of God. Why have the majority of Christian ministers rejected the Bible as the Word of God? And why are more and more Americans embracing Islam to make Islam the fastest growing religion in the United States today? I believe the answer is found partially in the fact, or in a story really, I can say it. Actually, I think I will say it in the form of a story of something that happened to a friend of mine. My friend's name is John Sullivan. He's a Muslim and very active in Islamic work in the United States. And one day he was driving to work, and he noticed a sign outside a church. And on the sign it said, "Don't think, pray." And John couldn't believe it. He said the church is telling him, "Don't think, just pray." So he stopped and he had his camera in the car, and so he was going to take a picture of it. He did get a picture of it. I have the picture in my office. He took the picture of the sign that says, "Don't think, pray." And while he was taking the picture, a lady who was the secretary at the church came out, and she said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Well, I'm a Muslim and I read this sign, I couldn't believe it. I wanted to get a picture to show the other Muslims." And she said, "Wait a minute." So she ran back into the church, and a few minutes later the minister came out. And the minister said, what are you doing here? And John said, "Look, I'm a Muslim. And as a Muslim we're taught that we should think about our faith." Faith in Islam means something that you've looked at and you've confirmed. Yeah, that makes sense. I accept it now. He said, we have to think about it. In fact, he said, the Quran tells us to look out into the world and look inside yourself and you will come to know the truth. And so he said, this is a very strange message for me as a Muslim to read. And the minister thought for a little while and he said, oh, I didn't put that up there for the Muslims. I put that up there for Christians. So John said, I guess that means that as a Muslim I can think and pray. A few days after I heard that story, the Association of American Atheists, a very active group in the United States, sent me a flyer, and on it said, don't pray, think. So I thought the atheists and the Christians should get together. They might come up with the Islamic position. Think and pray. The point is that the basic articles of faith in Christianity are mysteries. And yet we know in America, the most industrialized country in the world, that life cannot be lived on the basis of mysteries. Truth and facts are the basis of a normal, healthy, happy, and free life. As Jesus said, ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. He did not say, ye shall know a mystery, and the mystery shall make you free. He said the truth. And the truth is something that appeals to the mind.
In other news, surprising revelations tonight about the late Mother Teresa, who always professed great faith. Now, like many people of faith, it turns out she too had her doubts. Mark Phillips has the story.
In life, she was an icon for believers of God's work on earth. Her ministry to the poor of Calcutta, a world-renowned symbol of religious compassion. She was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. She had a calling, she told CBS News in a rare interview, based on unquestioned faith.
They are children of God, loved and created by the same loving heart of God.
But now it emerges that Mother Teresa was so doubtful of her own faith, she feared she was being a hypocrite. In a new book which compiles letters she wrote to friends, superiors, and confessors, her doubts are obvious. Shortly after beginning work in Calcutta's slums, the spirit leaves her. Where is my faith, she writes. Even deep down, there is nothing but emptiness and darkness. If there be God, please forgive me. 8 years later, she's still looking for the belief she's lost. Such deep longing for God, she writes, repulsed, empty, no faith, no love, no zeal. And as her fame increased, her faith refused to return. Her smile, she says, is a mask. What do I labor for, she asks. If there be no God, there can be no soul. If there be no soul, then Jesus, you also are not true.
These are letters that were kept in the Archbishop's house, the Archbishop of Calcutta's house.
The letters were gathered by Father Brian Kolodejchuk, the priest who's making the case to the Vatican for Mother Teresa's proposed sainthood. He says her obvious spiritual torment actually helps her cause.
And now we have this new understanding, a new window into her interior life, and for me, this seems to be the most heroic.
According to her letters, Mother Teresa died with her doubts. She had even stopped praying, she once said. The Church decided to keep her letters, even though one of her dying wishes was that they be destroyed. Perhaps now we know why. Mark Phillips, CBS News, London.